Welcome back, everybody. Today we're diving into Allan W. Eckert's The Frontiersman, a narrative.
Okay.
This book chronicles the life of Simon Kenton
Right.
and digs into westward expansion in the late 1700s and early 1800s.
Okay.
We're talking clashing cultures, larger-than-life figures like Tecumseh,
Right.
and the sometimes brutal reality behind the romanticized image of the frontier.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that romanticized image because Eckert doesn't shy away from the grittier aspects of life on the frontier. He really wants to immerse you in what it was truly like to exist on the edge of civilization, facing daily struggles for survival.
Right from the start, you're thrown into the thick of it with Simon Kenton's story.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who becomes a fugitive after believing he killed a man in a fight over a woman.
Wow.
What I found fascinating is how this event sets the stage for his incredible journey and transformation.
It's a powerful illustration of the make-or-break mentality that defined the frontier. From running from the law, Kenton learns to navigate the wilderness, becoming this incredibly skilled frontiersman who eventually plays a vital role in settling the Ohio River Valley. It makes you wonder, what kind of resilience did it take to not just survive, but thrive in such a harsh environment?
He really embodies that spirit of the frontier we hear so much about. But is it simply rugged individualism, or was there something more to it?
Well, Kenton's story reveals that the spirit of the frontier involved much more than just individual grit. It was also about community, cooperation, and a shared determination to carve out a life in the face of relentless challenges. For example, Kenton's survival depended heavily on his ability to learn from and collaborate with Native American tribes, even amidst the broader context of conflict.
That actually leads perfectly into our next point. Eckert doesn't sugarcoat the reality of conflict between settlers and Native Americans. He shows the violence and the brutality, but importantly, he presents both sides of the story.
It's crucial to understand the complexities of this era. On one hand, you have westward expansion fueled by a desire for land and opportunity. On the other hand, you have established Native American communities whose ways of life are being irrevocably disrupted.
And at the heart of that disruption is a pivotal figure, the Shawnee leader, Tecumseh.
Yeah, Tecumseh was extraordinary. He possessed this remarkable ability to unite disparate tribes under a shared vision to resist the encroachment of settlers and preserve their ancestral lands. This vision wasn't just about resistance, it was about cultural survival, about maintaining their way of life in the face of an overwhelming force.
So on the one hand, you have Simon Kenton, driven by personal survival and the pursuit of opportunity. On the other, you have Tecumseh, fighting for the very existence of his people and their culture. It's a powerful clash of motivations, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It highlights the fact that this wasn't a simple good versus evil narrative. Both Kenton and Tecumseh were strong leaders, each driven by a deep sense of purpose and a desire to protect what they held dear. It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white. It's full of shades of gray.
And that brings us to another point. Eckert drives home. The romanticized view of the frontier doesn't always match the reality. I mean, the way he describes the battles, the massacres, it's really intense.
He does that to make us confront the true cost of westward expansion. It wasn't just about adventure and opportunity, it was about displacement, conflict, and loss of life for both settlers and Native Americans.
Reading those passages really makes you think about the weight of leadership in such a turbulent time.
Yeah.
What did it even mean to lead effectively when you're constantly facing danger and uncertainty?
That's a great question, and it's something Eckert explores in depth through both Kenton and Tecumseh. They both faced immense pressure, not just from external threats, but also from the internal dynamics within their own communities.
I imagine maintaining unity and morale must have been incredibly difficult. How did they manage to inspire and motivate people in such a precarious environment?
They do it by understanding the needs and fears of their people, by sharing their hardships, and by offering a clear vision for the future. It's fascinating to see how, despite their opposing goals, both Kenton and Tecumseh displayed those core leadership qualities.
But even with those qualities, I'm sure they still faced limitations. Like leading on the frontier, it couldn't have just been about giving rousing speeches.
You're exactly right. It was about being in the trenches, making tough decisions that sometimes alienated people, and shouldering the responsibility for the consequences. Leadership in that context meant navigating incredibly complex situations where there were no easy answers.
Eckert really does a remarkable job of bringing those complexities to life, and I think it's his writing style that helps to make The Frontiersman such a compelling read.
Absolutely. He has this unique ability to weave historical facts into a narrative that feels as captivating as a novel. You're not just reading a dry account of events, you're experiencing the frontier through the eyes of the people who lived it.
But doesn't that approach, blurring the lines between history and fiction, come with its own set of challenges?
It certainly does. It raises the question of how we as readers engage with historical fiction. While Eckert was a meticulous researcher, he also took creative liberties, particularly with dialogue.
So it's important to remember that while we're getting swept up in the story, some details might be fictionalized for dramatic effect.
Precisely. The key is to enjoy the power of storytelling, to learn about the past, but also to maintain a critical eye and recognize that historical fiction is always an interpretation, not a purely factual account.
It's a reminder that even when exploring the past, we have to be mindful of the narratives being presented and the potential for bias or embellishment.
Exactly. We need to be active participants in our understanding of history, questioning, analyzing, and seeking out multiple perspectives to gain a more complete picture.
Now, speaking of different perspectives, one of the things that really struck me about the Frontiersmen was its exploration of the impact of European expansion on Native American communities.
That's one of the most significant aspects of the book. Eckert doesn't shy away from portraying the devastating consequences of westward expansion for Native American tribes. He illustrates how their cultures, traditions, and very way of life were disrupted and often destroyed.
It makes you think about how those events continue to resonate today. We're still grappling with the legacies of colonialism and its impact on indigenous populations around the world.
Absolutely. Understanding that historical context is essential for addressing contemporary issues related to land rights, cultural preservation, and social justice for indigenous communities.
You know, as we're talking about this, I'm starting to see how Eckert's book, even though it's about a specific time and place, has these really powerful and thought-provoking connections to issues we're still facing today.
It's true. The themes of resilience, cultural clash, and leadership that we see play out on the frontier are still relevant in our modern world.
It's like, even though centuries have passed, we're still grappling with similar challenges in different forms.
Exactly. Human nature, the desire for progress, the conflicts that arise from competing interests, those are timeless themes that continue to shape our world.
I'm really starting to grasp the depth of what Eckert is getting at here. It's not just a historical adventure story, it's a reflection on the human condition itself.
And that's the mark of a truly impactful work. It transcends its specific historical context and speaks to something universal about our shared human experience.
That's beautifully put. It makes you wonder, what specific parallels can we draw between the struggles those frontiersmen faced and the challenges we encounter in our own lives today?
Well, for starters, consider the concept of resilience. Back then, it was about physical survival, navigating the wilderness, and overcoming constant threats. Today, we might not face those same dangers, but we still need that inner strength to overcome obstacles, setbacks, and uncertainties.
It's like that grit, that determination to keep going even when things get tough, is something timeless.
Exactly. It's about adapting to change, bouncing back from adversity, and finding a way to thrive even in challenging circumstances.
And it's not just about individual resilience, is it? Eckert also shows us how crucial it is to understand and navigate cultural differences.
You're right. On the frontier, it was the clash between settlers and Native American tribes. Today, we have a globalized world where different cultures, ideologies, and perspectives are constantly interacting.
So the need for cultural understanding, for finding ways to bridge those divides and communicate effectively, is just as important now as it was back then.
Arguably even more so. In our interconnected world, our decisions and actions have global repercussions. Understanding and respecting different cultures isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for creating a more peaceful and equitable world.
And what about leadership? We talked about Kenton and Tecumseh, but are there any lessons from their experiences that apply to leaders today?
Absolutely. Both of them demonstrated the importance of connecting with people, sharing their struggles, and inspiring them with a vision for the future.
But it wasn't just about charisma, was it? They were making incredibly difficult decisions, often with life or death consequences.
You're right. Effective leadership on the frontier, and I would argue in any context, requires more than just charm. It requires courage, decisiveness, the ability to make tough calls under pressure, and the willingness to take responsibility for the outcomes.
So it's about finding that balance between inspiring people and making those difficult choices that might not always be popular, but are necessary for the greater good.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that true leadership often involves sacrifice, resilience, and a deep commitment to the well-being of the people you lead.
It's amazing how these themes, explored within the context of the American frontier, resonate so powerfully with our own lives and the challenges we face today.
And that's the beauty of great historical fiction. It has the ability to transport us to another time and place, but also to reflect back on our own present, prompting us to think critically about the world around us.
As we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into the Frontiersmen, I'm really starting to appreciate the depth and complexity of this book. It's more than just an adventure story. It's a window into the human experience, both past and present.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and facts. It's a tapestry woven from the lives, choices, and struggles of individuals who came before us. And those stories have the power to teach us, to inspire us, and to help us navigate our own personal journeys.
Before we move on to the next part of our discussion, I'm curious to get your take on something.
Oh, I'm all ears. What's on your mind?
Well, we've talked a lot about the challenges and complexities of the frontier, but I'm wondering if there's a danger in romanticizing that era. Do we sometimes overlook the harsher realities in favor of a more idealized view of the past?
That's a really insightful observation, and I think that's a tendency we often see when looking back at history. It's easy to get caught up in the adventure, the heroism, the idea of taming the wilderness, and forget about the very real struggles, the sacrifices, and the less glamorous aspects.
And the Frontiersman doesn't let us forget those things, does it? It forces us to confront the brutality, the moral ambiguity, the fact that progress often comes at a steep price.
Exactly. Eckert doesn't shy away from portraying the darker side of westward expansion. He shows us the violence, the displacement of Native American communities, the environmental degradation. He challenges us to grapple with the full picture, not just the romanticized version.
Which is so important because I think that tendency to romanticize the past can sometimes blind us to the lessons we need to learn from it.
You're absolutely right. If we only focus on the heroic narratives, we risk overlooking the mistakes, the injustices, and the complexities that shaped those historical events. And without that understanding, we're less likely to make informed decisions in the present.
It's like we need to find that balance between appreciating the achievements of the past and acknowledging the full context in which those achievements were made.
Precisely. We need to approach history with both curiosity and critical thinking, recognizing that it's not a simple, straightforward story. It's a tapestry woven from countless perspectives, motivations, and consequences.
And that brings us back to Eckert's unique approach to storytelling. He manages to weave all of those threads, the adventure, the conflict, the moral dilemmas, into a narrative that's both engaging and thought-provoking.
It's his ability to blend historical accuracy with a novelistic style that makes the Frontiersman so compelling. He brings the characters and events to life in a way that makes you feel like you're right there on the frontier, experiencing the challenges and triumphs alongside them.
Which is why I think this book has the potential to resonate so deeply with readers. It's not just a history lesson, it's an invitation to step into another world and grapple with universal human experiences.
And that's what makes it so relevant, even today. The themes of resilience, cultural understanding, and leadership that we see play out on the frontier are timeless and applicable to our own lives.
Speaking of which, we've talked about those themes in a broad sense, but I'm curious to explore them in a more concrete way. What are some specific examples from the book that illustrate those concepts, and how can we connect them to our own experiences?
Well, let's start with resilience. Think about Simon Kenton's journey. He faces one setback after another, becoming a fugitive, being captured and tortured by Native Americans, losing friends and comrades. Yet he never gives up. He finds the strength to persevere, to adapt, to keep moving forward.
It's almost superhuman, the level of resilience he displays. What do you think fueled that unwavering determination?
I think it was a combination of factors. Partly it was his own inner strength, his refusal to be defeated. But it was also about purpose. He had a vision for his life, a desire to build a future for himself on the frontier. And that vision kept him going, even when things were at their darkest.
So even in the midst of unimaginable hardship, having a clear sense of purpose can provide the fuel for resilience.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we can all relate to. When we have a goal, a passion, something that gives our lives, meaning it can give us the strength to overcome obstacles and stay focused on what matters most.
It's like that purpose acts as an anchor, grounding us when the storms of life threaten to sweep us away.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be something grand or world-changing. It can be anything that gives you a sense of direction. You want to get up in the morning and face the day.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about cultural understanding. One of the things that struck me about Eckert's portrayal of the frontier is that he doesn't present the relationship between settlers and Native Americans as a simple binary.
You're right. He goes beyond the simplistic good guys versus bad guys narrative and shows us the complexities of their interactions. There are moments of conflict and violence, but also moments of cooperation, respect, and even friendship.
Like when Kenton is captured by the Shawnee, he learns their language and customs, even fighting alongside them in battles. It's clear that he develops a certain level of respect for their way of life, even as he remains committed to his own goals.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have Native American characters who show compassion and understanding towards settlers, recognizing their humanity even amidst the broader context of conflict.
It's a reminder that even in the most challenging circumstances, it's possible to find common ground and build bridges of understanding.
And I think that's a crucial lesson for us today. In an increasingly diverse and interconnected world, the ability to empathize with people from different backgrounds, to see the world through their eyes, is essential for fostering peace, collaboration, and mutual respect.
It's about recognizing that even when we have differences, we all share the same basic human needs and desires for safety, belonging, and a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And when we focus on those shared values, it becomes easier to bridge the divides that separate us.
So building on this idea of connection and shared values, let's dive into the theme of leadership. We've already touched upon the qualities that both Simon Kenton and Tecumseh possessed: resilience, courage, vision. But what are some specific instances from the book that really highlight their leadership styles?
Well, think about how Kenton, even as a young man, steps up to lead scouting expeditions, risking his own safety to protect his community. He doesn't just give orders, he leads by example, inspiring others through his own actions.
It's like he embodies that saying, don't tell people how to do things, show them.
Exactly. And then you have Tecumseh, who travels tirelessly across vast distances, uniting disparate tribes under a shared vision for resistance. He's a master communicator, a strategist, and a motivator who inspires his people to fight for their survival.
It's fascinating how both men, despite being on opposing sides of the conflict, exhibit such strong leadership qualities. What do you think are some of the key takeaways we can glean from their examples?
I think one of the most important lessons is that effective leadership isn't about wielding power or dictating terms. It's about understanding the needs of the people you lead, inspiring them with a compelling vision, and empowering them to contribute their talents and strengths.
It's about creating a sense of shared purpose and working together to achieve common goals.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to make tough decisions even when they're unpopular, while always prioritizing the well-being of those you lead.
It sounds like effective leadership, whether on the frontier or in our modern world, is about finding that balance between strength and compassion, vision and practicality, decisiveness and empathy.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a complex and nuanced skill set, but one that's essential for navigating the challenges we face as individuals, communities, and societies.
So as we wrap up this part of our discussion, I'm left with a profound sense of admiration for the resilience, courage, and leadership displayed by the characters in The Frontiersmen. Their stories offer valuable insights into the human spirit and the timeless challenges we face no matter what era we live in.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a reminder that history isn't just something we read about in textbooks. It's a living, breathing narrative that shapes who we are and how we understand the world around us.
And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I'm eager to explore one last aspect of Eckert's book. I keep thinking about Eckert's choice to focus on a lesser-known figure like Simon Kenton. Why not tell the story of a more famous frontiersman like Daniel Boone? What does highlighting Kenton's story allow Eckert to do?
That's a good question. I think by focusing on Kenton, it allows Eckert to explore the frontier experience from a more grounded human perspective. Boone, while certainly a significant figure, has taken on an almost mythical status in American history.
Right.
Kenton, on the other hand, feels more relatable, more like an everyman navigating the challenges of this era.
So Kenton becomes a lens through which we can see the grittier, less romanticized aspects of frontier life.
Exactly. Through Kenton's struggles and triumphs, Eckert can paint a more nuanced picture of what it truly meant to be a frontiersman, the hardships they faced, the choices they had to make, and the impact those choices had on both themselves and those around them.
And by doing so, Eckert challenges our preconceived notions of what the frontier was like.
Absolutely. He forces us to confront the complexity, the moral ambiguities, the fact that there were no easy answers in this environment. It wasn't just about conquering the wilderness. It was about navigating a web of relationships, conflicts, and compromises.
This makes me think about the legacy of the frontiersmen. How did the book impact our understanding of the frontier and its significance in American history?
I think the Frontiersmen played a significant role in revitalizing interest in frontier history, prompting readers to look beyond the romanticized narratives and engage with the period's complexities. It's a book that sparked conversations, challenged assumptions, and encouraged a more nuanced understanding of this crucial chapter in America's past.
And Eckert himself, did he influence other writers or historians?
Eckert's blend of meticulous research and engaging storytelling had a profound impact on the genre of narrative history. He demonstrated that history could be both factual and captivating, inspiring a new generation of writers to approach historical subjects with both accuracy and artistry.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the frontiersman, what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listener with?
I'd say this. The frontier might be a thing of the past, but its legacy continues to shape our understanding of ourselves and our nation. Through Simon Kenton's story, Allan Eckert challenges us to confront the complexities of history, to recognize the human cost of progress, and to appreciate the enduring spirit of those who came before us.
Beautifully said. The Frontiersman is more than just a historical adventure. It's a powerful reminder that the past is never truly past. Its echoes resonate in our present, shaping our values, our choices, and our understanding of the world around us.
And as we grapple with the challenges of our own time, perhaps we can find inspiration and guidance in the stories of those who face their own frontiers with courage, resilience, and a determination to create a better future.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Frontiersman. We encourage you to seek out this book and explore its rich tapestry of history, adventure, and human experience. Until next time, keep diving deep.